Sunday, September 1st, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We've got another awesome matchup at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's the USC Trojans versus the LSU Tigers. Ironically, the LSU Tigers are the home team in this matchup, Mason, but nobody will be playing at home. They will be playing in the desert. Um, USC breaks in a new quarterback. It's the era after Caleb Williams. What will this team look like? Miller Moss looks to take over on offense. You have a new defensive coordinator at USC and D'Anton Lynn coming over from UCLA after the Kelly departure there at UCLA. So, what does that mean for a defense that has gotten a reputation that has not been very good over the last few years? And furthermore, Lincoln Riley's reputation as a coach that can't coach a defense. So, what does that change about that storyline? Those storylines are something interesting we're going to look at. And then on LSU's side of the ball, you lose your offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock. What does that mean for the offense, right? And then on defense, you bring in Blake Baker to fix what has been a porous defense. It wasn't that long ago, Mason, we thought of LSU and we thought DBU. That has not been the case over the last couple of years. There's been Band-Aids put on cuts that need stitches in that secondary, and we're going to address that today as well. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is one of the premier games of the opening weekend. How will these teams look different in 2024? That's what I want to figure out. LSU's offense was unbelievable, first of all, in 2023. You can see some of the numbers there on your screen. First, or at least top 10 in damn near every category. But as I said, Mike Denbrock is gone. Jaden Daniels is gone. Nussmeier comes in. He's taken over. So you got a couple of new quarterbacks taking over for their teams here. I like Nussmeier. I like some of the pieces they've got on offense. I'll let you kind of get into that in a second, Mason. And then, as I said, the defenses are just horrible. And you can see some of the 2023 stats there for LSU. The passing defense has been just iconically bad over the last couple of years. I mean, it's been something that every talking head in college football has talked about. What happened to LSU and their defense? Those questions have yet to be answered. Blake Baker is doing his best to do so. And then defensively, you can see on your screen there, Southern Cal has a lot of the same stuff going on defensively. They go into the portal and they tried to fix a lot of those issues. We're going to kind of talk through some of those position groups and some of the keys to victory for this team because it's not hard to see, Mason, that in this game, whichever team can play some defense is probably going to win. So what do you think about these two teams? What are your thoughts, some key players that you're looking at, and kind of your outlook on this game? LSU is favored by 4.5 points at this point. We'll kind of talk about our picks at the end. The over-under set at 63.5, one of the highest totals of the weekend. Vegas doesn't feel like there's going to be a ton of defense played here. What are your thoughts on the game?
Well, you kind of alluded to this, but these are two very similar teams playing one another this year. Both teams are breaking in new quarterbacks. With Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, who has some playing experience, probably a little bit more than Miller Moss, but we have seen Miller Moss in a bowl game, and he looked really good. And two teams that have elite pass catching weapons for LSU. It's Kyron Lacey, it's Chris Hilton, right? And it's Mason Taylor at tight end. And for USC, it's Zachariah Branch, and Deuce Robinson. And I guess outside of them, you probably point to maybe a Kyle Ford coming over as a transfer. But Zachariah Branch and Deuce Robinson are pretty top level in my opinion. I think that those are the better of really this whole bunch. Maybe save Kyron Lacey, but yeah, two similar teams on offense. I think that the offensive lines, you can definitely see a disadvantage if you're looking between USC's offensive line and LSU's. LSU's offensive line is one of the best in the country, and that would be that would be the discrepancy between the two offenses there if you're comparing the two. But over on defense, we also see a lot of comparisons. So new defensive coordinators for both. Um, Abysmal defenses for both last season. I mean, they're coming off of historically bad defenses for the most part. But then when you go position group by position group and you start to compare the two, you notice right away something that is a little bit different, and that's on the defensive lines. I think that USC, as a pass rushing unit, has one of the better defensive lines in the Big Ten. I mean, when you really look at what they did statistically and what they bring back, Bear Alexander was really good at pass rush last year on the interior of the defensive line. And then the best of this defensive line was Jamil Muhammad. And you see on your screen there, 10.5 tackles for a loss, 6.5 sacks. Those are really good numbers. Um, also also in the front seven for USC, Mason Cobb looked pretty good last year. Led the team in tackles with 85 tackles. Now a lot of that was due to the fact that, to me, USC's defensive line, as good as they were against the pass, and as good as they were at pass rushing the quarterback, they were really bad against the run. So I think a lot of Mason Cobb's stats came from a porous defensive line and him just having to make plays. Poor guy's just stuck on the second level of the defense with dudes flying at him with the football, and he's just having to make plays. So I think that had a lot to do with that. But when you look at LSU's defensive line, I don't see that. I don't see that at all. I didn't see it last season. They didn't bring in any transfers. I mean, the only transfers you look at are Gio Paez and Shone Washington, who came over. Shone Washington came over from Georgia, and I think he went to a community college after Georgia, and now he's back in his home state of Louisiana playing defensive tackle. He doesn't figure to be the starter right away, but I think he could play himself into that role. Does Braden Swinson step up for LSU this year? He comes over from Oregon last season. Expected a lot more out of him last year. We didn't really see that. So I think that there's a real discrepancy between those two, the defensive lines. I think you've got two really good linebacking groups. I'm not going to go too far into detail on that. I will say, obviously, Harold Perkins is one of the best linebackers in the country. Excited to see how he's utilized this year. With Blake Baker coming over as the defensive coordinator, how does that partnership work? How does that relationship work between coach and who is probably the best player on the team? I think I would say at this point in Harold Perkins. I don't know. Last year had 13 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks, and we called it a down year for Harold Perkins. That's the type of player that he is, but I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. So moving on to the secondary, here's where I've got a lot of questions. I'm scratching my head because I don't really know. There's a lot of unprovens in these two secondary groups. I don't know that I can really say that one is definitively better than the other if we're just looking at position group by position group. Both are pretty bad, right? In my opinion, neither did anything that's just going to absolutely wow you as far as bringing in guys from the transfer portal, bringing in true freshmen, or anything like that. I don't know. I don't really see an advantage one way or another in these units between the two units. But to me, this game's gonna come down to really how the offensive lines play versus the defensive lines. I think you got good on good between LSU's offensive line versus USC's defensive line, and then kind of bad on bad on the opposite side, where I think that USC's offensive line is a little bit worse than LSU's, and LSU's defensive line is a little bit worse than USC's. So a little bit of a wash there, but who's going to step up? Look, this game's won in the trenches, Mark. I think that's kind of always the case. But before I go too long, I've been blabbing for some time now, Mark. I don't want to give you my pick yet. I want to hear about a little bit more about what you see in these matchups. I honestly don't know who I'm picking yet. I think that this is going to be a very close game. But what do you see in the matchups? Help me come to a conclusion here.
Well, one guy that I know that we have not talked about yet, maybe there's a reason. Maybe you know something I don't. Did we leave Woody Marks off of here for any reason in particular? The running
No,
back from Mississippi State?
no, to me, he's an
Okay.
unproven. I mean, he's playing. There's nothing. There's nothing saying he's
Well,
not playing in this game. I just don't know about him. I think he's a little unproven for me.
what I do like about him, he is a really good pass catcher out of the backfield, and I
Hmm.
think that's going to help this offense a ton. You need that escape valve, and this guy returns to college football this year, and I believe out of all the active players in all of college football, he has the most receptions for a running back. So this guy is prolific at catching the ball out of the backfield. So I fully expect USC to utilize him that way, and I think that in that way he can be a game changer. I don't, dude. You could put Herschel Walker back behind this offensive line. He's going to probably have some rough days at times.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think this offensive line wasn't great last year. Caleb Williams bailed this offensive line out a ton. I think it will be a little bit better this year. You've got a couple of decent little pieces at center, and I believe it was one of those guard spots. I had wrote it down on my notes, but it's not great. It's not anything great, and I am interested to see Mason. Here's another underlying storyline for me. How good is this LSU offensive line? That's what I want to figure out. I know they're good. I know they're good. They return a ton of guys. I get that. 4 out of 5 starters returning. I fully understand that. Jaden Daniels bailed their ass out all the time last year. I mean, dude, he could take off at any minute. He did it all the time. He was a threat to go 80 yards at any moment. I felt like he kind of helped keep the defensive lines in place a little bit. A little bit. How do they adapt to having a full pocket passer in Nussmeier? This is a big transition. This is a very big transition. It's no secret that Jaden Daniels threw this team on his back with help of Malik Neighbors last year. Are there wide receivers that can do this for LSU this year? Yeah. Chris Hilton is really good, guys. Kyron Lacey is really good. There's other guys behind them. I think Mason Taylor will be utilized pretty well. I like how you put Bama Killer in there in parentheses. I like that. Um, but it really does come down to these secondaries, Mason. Vegas feels like this is going to be a high scoring game, and it's not because they feel like these teams are going to run the ball a bunch, guys. Feels like Vegas thinks these teams are going to throw on one another, and I fully anticipate that they will, but I am more comfortable at this point. It's weird to say. I'm more comfortable with the guys that USC has brought in through the transfer portal in their secondary than I am with LSU. I'm not fully satisfied with LSU. And that's totally just not even bringing up the defensive line situation for LSU. No question the Tigers should have picked up a defensive lineman at some point, but they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. I don't know, what the holdup there was. If it was a money NIL thing, I don't know. I'm not inside the NIL, structure there. But USC, I like what they did in the secondary position, as I said, and they should be improved with John Humphrey coming in from UCLA. You brought DeCarlos Nicholson coming in from Mississippi State. They'll be working to earn some corner spots. You bring back Prophet Brown and Jacoby Covington. So those are a couple of returning guys. We've done a ton of these breakdowns. I can't tell you how many USC secondary players hit the door from last year, and I think they were told to do so. I think they were told just to get the hell out of here. We're bringing in some new guys, and so this defensive coordinator did that. You bring in experience with Kamari Ramsey. If you guys, a lot of people probably don't remember Kamari Ramsey from last year, but he was a safety for UCLA, which was a really good defense. Played for Deonton Lynn there in UCLA, and then you bring in Akili Arnold from Oregon State, who also transferred in. Um, and that's not even to mention some of the linebackers they got. I don't know if you mentioned him, I may have missed it, but Easton Mascarenas Arnold coming over from Oregon State. I mean, he had 107 tackles last year. All Pac-12 player in a Pac-12. This was the best Pac-12 we've seen in years. and he was all Pac-12. So I like what USC has done. The secondary for LSU, it just seems like it's a lot of the same dudes, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of the same guys just kind of shuffled around. And oh, by the way, Sage Ryan, who you look, this guy had good moments last year. He had some pretty damn bad ones as well. He's your versatile guy. He's moving all around. He's got a hamstring injury. He was sitting out of practice. So what does his secondary look like? I'm not saying he's not playing, guys. Coach says that he's should be fine to play. But you tell me how quick a hamstring heals. I mean, I'm not Sage Ryan. He might, be one of those people that heals up really, really quick. I'm not sure. But if I have a hamstring injury, I won't be playing football next week. I know that. Um, eh, so with that being said, Major Burns, you shuffle him around, he'll be at nickel. Ashton Stamps comes back. Nobody's even heard of Ashton Stamps unless you're an LSU fan. I mean, this isn't some kind of
Yeah.
household name here in the secondary. So you bring in Jardine Gilbert from A&M, decent piece. He had some decent numbers, but this wasn't Texas A&M's secondary was not good last year, guys. It was ranked like 75th in the country. It wasn't great. So bringing in a piece from that secondary that's not fixing anything, in my opinion. And PJ Woodland is a guy that's returning but doesn't have really any experience, going to be asked to step up. So I tell you all you this to, all you that to tell you this. I feel better about what USC has done on the secondary. I'm not one that has given USC a ton of compliments over the past few years. We call it like we see it here on the First and Long College Football Show. USC seems to be making some steps in the right direction. Defense, you can't snap your fingers and build a defense. It's going to take a couple years. So, but we talked about it before we started recording, Mason. What is the potential for this team and the ceiling for this team if they just have a top 50 defense? Because offensively, USC, I mean, they're top 10 in most categories. You can say rushing last year, they weren't top 10, but they were still top 35. Very serviceable. They're always going to be good. As long as Lincoln Riley is the coach, they're going to have an offense. So if this defense can pull itself up by the bootstraps and somehow get within the top 60 or top 50, I think USC is going to surprise some people in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying they're going to surprise Ohio State or Oregon necessarily, but I think they're going to be a little better equipped than what people think they are. As we kind of have done this deep dive, I've kind of came to that realization. But I'll go ahead and give you what my predictions are, and then we'll hear what you got to say. Your final predictions here. I'm taking US plus 4.5. I'm trusting my gut here, guys. I think there's a really high probability that Garrett Nussmeier comes out here and absolutely, even with me saying, all the guys you've added in the secondary, you're not going to snap your fingers and this defense be really good all of a sudden. So I think there's a big possibility Nussmeier comes out and he still dices this defense up. I get it. I fully 100% agree with that. But USC is going to do the same thing to LSU. I can promise you. This defense is not there. The secondary is not there yet. The defensive line and the secondary are huge questions for LSU. I think it bites him in the butt in this game. And I hate to say it, I think LSU kind of gets out physicaled a little bit by USC, and probably out coached with the tools that they have on hand. So give me USC plus 4.5, and that over under, man, that is such a tough thing. But I'm taking over. There's 0% chance I'm taking an under in this game with these defenses. If you
Yeah.
are betting under with an LSU and USC defenses playing one another, you are a glutton for punishment, and you need to make sure that you're taking your blood pressure medicine before the game, because you're going to be on the edge of your seat pretty much the whole time. Give me the over. Give me the USC plus 4.5. What do you got?
Yeah. Given what you just said, I agree with you on the over under. Like you can't pick the under, but at the same time, like I'm not confident enough to play the over, right? I can't know that for sure because I don't know what I'm going to get out of the offensive coordinator or offensive coordinators at LSU with Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton. I don't know what I got. If Mike Denbrock were calling the plays, I'd be choosing over all the way. I just don't know because they're unproven offensive coordinators. I don't know what I'm going to get out of them. So to me, That in conjunction with what you've already said about USC, I'm going to take Lincoln Riley, and I'm gonna trust that he's going to be able to win in a boat race. I think it's close. I really do think it's close. I think that USC could lose by 3 points, right, and you still
Yeah.
cover. Um, I think that's very realistic and very possible, but I don't think that LSU wins by a touchdown. I don't think that that's going to happen. Not with all that's on the line for USC. Um, I don't feel great about it. I'm not rushing to bet this, but if I had to pick, I would take USC, and I think that they're going to be able to keep it within 4.5 points in this game.
Yeah, I think it's a 3-point victory here for either side. I could see it going
Yeah.
either because of the offenses and just whoever has the ball last, is going to have a real good shot to win this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a 3-point victory, one way or the other, is a very, very probable outcome for this one. And that's what I'm predicting. I'm thinking just for giggles, we'll look back on this. I'll probably be way wrong, but I think USC 45, LSU 42. That's what I think here. I think it's going to be ultra high scoring, very entertaining, and everybody's eyes will be glued on this one as it's the only game going on Sunday. Going to be a really, really good one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to the First and Long College Football Show. Check out our channel. We'd love to have you. Hope you'll hit the subscribe button and come hang out with us.